All right. It is officially 12:01 in my time zone, so we'll go ahead and get this kicked off. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Scott Anton, VP of Sales Strategy with Gideon Taylor, and I want to welcome you to this month's webinar. This is a special webinar for us outside of some of you might join us for our monthly Lunch and Learns. This is a very special topic and a very hot topic, judging by the number of folks that we had RSVP for this webinar. WCAG 2.1, AA compliance in PeopleSoft, the accessibility playbook you need. You might hear folks refer to that as WCAG, WCAG, or WCAG. For me, I refer to it as WCAG. So this afternoon, over the course of the next hour, we're going to help you understand what those compliance issues are in PeopleSoft, a little bit of an introduction in terms of what those new compliance requirements are, and then ways to address those within your PeopleSoft applications. Jay, you want to click to the next slide? For those of you who may not be familiar with Gideon Taylor, this is just a quick snapshot of what we encompass. This is our 25th year as a longtime PeopleSoft and Oracle implementation partner. A lot of what we do today is helping organizations implement, upgrade, maintain, and optimize their PeopleSoft systems and help with their strategies in terms of where they're going next. So in the upper left corner, you see our PeopleSoft and Fusion application practice. In the upper right is eForm services. There are probably many of you on the call today that are familiar with GT eForms. A People Tools-based plugin or bolt-on that a lot of organizations use to create their own custom, fluid, compliant applications inside PeopleSoft. Lower right, AI and UX. That is an exciting practice for us that has existed for a number of years, helping organizations understand and apply AI within their applications and their organizations, and also reimagining the user experience. So completely redefining how your users interact with the data in your PeopleSoft systems and other systems for that matter. Lower left, cloud enablement. Another exciting area that we've gotten involved in over the last few years is helping organizations map their journey to cloud. And in some cases, that might just start off with migrating their PeopleSoft environments to OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or going beyond that, hosting other applications in the cloud. And we are fully staffed and certified to host and manage those cloud environments. We're actually one of the largest ODA consumers, Oracle Digital Assistant in OCI, one of the largest ODA consumers in North America, as far as Oracle partners are concerned. Jay, if you want to click it one more time. This particular webinar, our topic today, talking about compliance in PeopleSoft, is actually encompassing 3 different practices of ours, leveraging skills and tools that we've got in each one of those. Some of it is going to be talking about PeopleSoft development and what can be done to help make your pages and your applications compliant. eForm services, GT eForms out of the box are compliant as long as you design your forms the right way. So those are fully fluid and fully PeopleSoft integrated. And then finally, AI and UX, most namely our UX solutions and tools to help define user experience. Next slide. So with that, with a quick introduction to who Gideon Taylor is, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers today. Jay Jorgensen is our product lead for our PeopleSoft applications, and Chuck Ritchie is our UX solution architect, and both of them are steeped in this particular topic. So gentlemen, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you. Oh, actually, little housekeeping, forgot about this. So everybody who did register for the webinar will receive a link to the recording afterwards. So feel free to share that with others if you need or want to. If you've got questions, which I assume you will, go ahead and post those in the chat or the Q&A. We'll be monitoring both of those during our session. We might take timeouts to respond to those on the fly, or we might choose to hold some of those until the end. So just as an FYI. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you guys.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. Chuck and I are really excited to deliver this presentation. Most of the clients we're talking to right now, accessibility is probably a cause of panic more than any other feeling, but we hope that with today's information and some plans that GT is going to unveil, hopefully the panic will be reduced a little bit, and you'll feel more comfortable, have a plan for how to meet these requirements with the looming deadline. So today, what we'll go through, we'll just talk generally what the DOJ's Title II rule is for Americans with Disabilities Act, the current state of the industry and what we're seeing, the risks associated with not complying. You probably all are aware that there are risks. That's probably why you're in this webinar today. And then specifically PeopleSoft and ADA, what Oracle is doing and not doing to address accessibility issues. Then lastly, compliance planning. So what your plan should look like to address the issues. And then lastly, some implementation things. All right, so let's jump into here. So the DOJ's ADA Title II. So first of all, what is it? And then who does it apply to? For what it is, it's the DOJ's first formal regulation for public entities to serve those with disabilities, people with disabilities. So specifically, public entities must make their web content and their mobile applications, basically any digital content must be accessible, which is largely interpreted as being at least WCAG 2.1 AA. There's also accessibility that's better than WCAG 2.1 AA, but that's kind of just the accepted minimum, that minimum requirement that must be met. So importantly, this includes content that you produce on your own, or your organization produces on its own, or content that you get through vendors like Oracle with PeopleSoft, or Gideon Taylor with GT Forms, or any of our other product offerings. So what that means is, if you have a vendor who is not fully compliant, you must have a plan to address that, to not be liable. For who it applies to, it's state and local governments and their extension organizations. So that includes like cities, counties, and states, public school districts and universities or colleges. So if you're a public institution, it applies to you. Then public authorities and departments, so like your transit authority, libraries, all of that too. Private entities do not fall under Title II. They fall under Title III, which has a different deadline. Okay, so what does Title II apply to? I mentioned it's essentially all digital content that you serve to the populations, that you serve to the populations in your area. So public-facing sites. So this would be anything that's accessible to the public. Like maybe you have a web page for your university or your for your government or anything like that. Any public site falls under Title II, has to be accessible with WCAG 2.1 AA. Internal-facing sites are also covered. So the big one that we'll talk about today is PeopleSoft. Just because it's not public doesn't mean it falls outside of this regulation. Your employees, your students, your staff, faculty, your citizens even, if they have to sign in, that system still has to be accessible. Online forms and PDFs also have to be accessible. One thing we're seeing is kind of a loophole. We don't recommend it, but because of the deadline and the pressure to hit it, we are seeing some clients stop providing digital forms and PDFs and making them paper, which is probably a worse choice overall for accessibility, but just with the pressure of getting accessible by the deadline, they're making that choice, so it falls outside of this regulation. Even things like scheduling and meeting tools. So for example, this Teams meeting, I don't know if Microsoft has made it completely accessible, but if you're using Teams or Zoom or any other kind of thing like that, or scheduling tools for a student to schedule an appointment with their counselor, all of those tools must also be accessible. Other portals or payment systems, even including like single sign-on, that stuff's got to be accessible. And then additionally, any mobile apps that you use. PeopleSoft's included here. Technically, it's not really a mobile app, but it's a web page, so it can be used on mobile devices. One thing we didn't list out here too, just calling out in case you're unaware, even things like video content has to be accessible. For that one specifically, video content has to come with transcripts of it for those who can't watch a video or can't hear a video. All right. So when do you need to be compliant with the standards? If you serve a population that's greater than 50,000, you have until April 24th. So we're a couple months out from that. It is definitely rapidly approaching. One question we get is, well, actually, one second. If you serve a population less than 50,000, you have until the following year, or I suppose 367 days extra to be exact. One question we get all the time is, what does a population, like who goes into a population? And there's not a lot of super clear information. But certainly if you're a higher ed institution, that's going to be all of your students, all of your staff, all of your faculty. And then for hiring, for like PeopleSoft HCM, all of your existing employees, probably past employees who still use PeopleSoft for maybe benefits or that kind of thing. If you're a government entity, it probably includes all of your citizens. My impression is that most people and most organizations are going to fall under this category. Okay. So if you're feeling unprepared, you're definitely not alone. You're in good company. So we looked up a couple stats, and for state and local governments, about half of states are in the process of implementing remedies to accessibility issues. Some states are providing accessibility help to their municipal governments that fall under in that state, but not all state governments are doing that. Even so, only half of states right now are on their way, or at least, I mean, that was as of January 2026, so not very long ago. For higher education, in the surveys, about half have said they've at least implemented a policy or framework for it. And then 62% are only somewhat confident that they meet standards, and 23% are not very confident at all. So inversely, maybe only about 15% of higher ed respondents to the survey feel very confident that they're well prepared for this. And as you all know, I mean, there are risks if you don't comply. One thing that is possible is users can file complaints with the DOJ, and the DOJ can launch an investigation and force corrective action. That's one risk. Civil suit, so private lawsuits and fines will be a part of it. Public entities can be sued under Title II. How much you can be sued, I wish was a lot easier to give you an answer, but there's a lot of conflicting information. The best that we can tell is that for your first offense, it could be in the ballpark of 75,000 for maximum civil penalty. Subsequent violations, though, it looks like there'd be a max of 150 each. The other risk is that if you don't comply, federal funding of your organizations could be withheld or come with stipulations. We don't know what we don't know yet in terms of like how often will lawsuits occur, how aggressively is the DOJ going to prosecute, how aggressive are they going to be with withholding funding. These are answers we don't know yet, but hopefully with the information today will help you reduce your risk profile as much as possible. So in terms of PeopleSoft, what is Oracle doing to address these, and what are they not doing? So Oracle has published ACRs. That stands for Accessibility Conformance Report for each of their application suites. Basically, this just means that for each of the pillars, they've defined known limitations of accessibility. Not ultra helpful in addressing them, but at least hey, these are things that even Oracle acknowledges are problems, and will at least help with some of the testing time to identify those issues. They have standard mode in PeopleSoft and screen reader mode. So low vision folks, they can turn on screen reader mode and have it navigate the site for them. They have continued investment in fluid development, particularly in their self-service areas, which, if you're unaware, fluid is not perfect with accessibility, but it's far better than classic. And fluid accessibility bugs or fluid accessibility issues are considered bugs by Oracle. There are ways to submit your service request that make that easier, that we can talk about. What is Oracle not doing? There's little or no accessibility support for your Classic and Classic Plus pages, and Classic Plus doesn't do anything to fix the accessibility issues. It's just lipstick on a pig, so to speak. Thousands of Classic pages will never be fluid. That's information we've gotten from Oracle, that in their roadmap, they know that they have thousands of Classic pages that they will not be converting to a fluid solution. And then, of course, like I mentioned, they have declared limitations in their ACRs, and those things are not in the roadmap to address. All right. Okay, so now we can get into the part of what to do about it. So I think this is Chuck's turn. I'll have to hand it over to Chuck.
Great. Yeah. So really, the big thing is creating a plan to meet your accessibility standards. Nobody knows when and how quickly the federal and states will enforce this act. So really, having this plan is your defense against claims. It shows that you're making progress, you see the issues, and you are moving forward with it. Yeah. So really, this entails cataloging your system, finding out what pages you have, what content you have. Again, remember, this is digital content. So PeopleSoft, they have a lot of that in the system, really, depending on if you're using Interactive Hub and all of that, you might have content, you might have news. So it's not just classic pages and not just fluid pages. But the big thing is identifying the priority of these pages. What's the high traffic? Who's the audience? Do you have a lot of self-service pages that affect a larger population? So identifying your priority and what makes the biggest impact. And then really kind of scheduling and implementing your accessibility fixes. Having a plan of when you address all these issues. So again, this compliance plan is not guaranteed to prevent claims, but it's your best approach. If you're not compliant, it kind of shows where you are and where you're going. And in reality, compliance plan is more than just these three things. It really should include like testing approaches, ownership models, your governance model, your next phase actions to continue, progress towards your WCAG 2.1 AA alignment.
And if I can add, Chuck,
yes,
like one thing is we are seeing very few organizations achieve complete compliance by April 24th. We don't know really if any that's going to achieve that. This is why we say the first part is define a plan and then stick to it with your schedule, so that if you do have a claim or any kind of issue, you can point to, here's everything that we've done and here's everything we're planning to do to hopefully mitigate liability.
Thanks, Jay. All right, and then really, just to show an example, using like an automated accessibility tool against classic classic pages, a few pages, you see a lot of common critical issues like different parent elements missing area roles, and form elements missing labels, and links having discernible text. So over here on the right, you see just with these pages alone, we've got like 13 critical issues and 112 serious issues. So quite a bit of issues with Classic. And again, like as Jay mentioned, if they don't have a fluid page, Oracle, they might not be addressing these. So usually that leaves it to your organization, your institution, to actually try to remedy the situation. And then, as Jay mentioned, it's not just Classic; it's also fluid. So with fluid, you'll notice here on this one, this test, we found like 8 critical for inner time, but most of the other representative pages we went to, most of the criticals are addressed. But again, there's still issues, and that's a big thing. A big thing with PeopleSoft in general is form elements not having labels or accessible names. So there's a lot of things like this. So usually, as you go through these, identifying your issues, a lot of times you want to have an automated tool so that as you do fixes, you can come back and rerun your assessment and see your progress. So other things with tools, there's as developers are say developing custom pages or custom pagelets. If you're using iHub and other things, that's still very big. To create custom pagelets, either with Pagelet Wizard or with iScripts, but really having your developers have tools in their dev tool, so they're thinking accessibility first as they're doing development.
One thing, if I can add to, Chuck, is just because we see 8 and 15 here, like in the critical and serious, one good thing is that not all issues are specific to a single component or a page. So some of these problems that you can fix once and get a lot of other pages also fixed. But clearly in our small just subset of tests that we ran on just a handful of pages, even fluid has some critical and some serious issues that have to be addressed.
Yeah, and one other thing is with the WCAG 2 AA, there's a lot of gray areas. So there's a lot of recommendations, and some of those aren't actually requirements. So there's a fine line of what's interpreted as a requirement and what would be something that impacts this Title II. But again, most institutions we see, they really try to address these extra recommended accessibility, so that helps all the users out. So, all right. So really, here's some steps for addressing the gaps in accessibility. Again, really, we kind of showed you the PeopleSoft Classic and the Fluid. Again, Fluid is your best approach over Classic, but at times, it doesn't address everything. So that's where having some universal fix scripts to address some of the issues, some of the common issues is good. Sometimes you need to do targeted enhancements for the fluid pages and components. The Classic pages, a lot of times with that, if there's a fluid component, you probably want to start transitioning to that. I know there's been many institutions that have stuck with Classic, and they're just underway with their fluid implementations. And as Jay mentioned, a lot of Classic pages, they don't have a fluid. So what do you do there? Really, the approach is maybe develop your own fluid component that replaces that custom fluid page, or you use something like our eForms product. which is fluid, and it also is something that's configurable. It's a low code solution. And you'll see here from PeopleSoft Classic a dotted line to the Apply Universal WCAG Fix scripts. Again, some fluid implementations might take some time, or you might not have the time and you want to address things quickly. So that's where a lot of times applying scripts for pages is important. So this would be after the page runs, you can apply scripts and tools to actually remedy a lot of these issues. And we'll show you something a bit later. The other thing, as I mentioned in iHub, there's they have a content management system. So a lot of institutions are storing PDFs in there, or they're referencing external sites that have PDFs. And that's PDFs is a little bit more challenging trying to fix those. And often you don't need to have the PDFs. A big thing in the Northwest, I've seen, as Jay mentioned, a lot of institutions actually taking their PDFs offline. So if they can't get it fixed, they're taking it offline, and now the information is not available, or the population has to go and read paper. So solution to that is actually moving it to fluid pages, having forms within PeopleSoft. eForms is a great replacement for PDFs. And then at times, whether it's Fluid Classic or you have iHub, maybe you have the older Classic home pages, or you have news and content. A lot of those, you might need to apply specific page fixes for those. So, the one thing with say with our web UX products, a lot of those are within all the environments, but they give you actual control of the HTML, so you can do templating or fix things and address accessibility up front. So same thing if you're doing custom iHub pages, like iScripts, you have a bit more control and flexibility to do things at the source.
One thing I'll add too is just we laid this diagram out from easiest to hardest. The most time consuming and the hardest is applying page specific fixes. So following this map as closely as possible, like in a couple slides ago, there were like 130 issues on the classic pages, many of which were critical. Fluid had a far smaller number. And if I'm one of you building my compliance plan, I'm going to be targeting what's the biggest bang for my buck each step of the way until I do it eventually achieve 100% compliance.
All right, so fluid adoption, PeopleSoft. Where do you fit in? And quite a large audience here. Probably would have been smart to do a formal survey, but maybe if some of you could like type in the chat, like where is your organization using Fluid? And how are you using it? Are you using it just for your self-service pages? Are you using it for your transactional pages? Or are you not using it? And then as far as when you do customizations, are you developing with Fluid, or are you developing with accessibility? So yeah, we'd like to kind of hear your feedback of where you are on this. And then
Jay and Chuck, while we're waiting for folks to enter their responses into the chat, do you want to address the few questions that have come up?
Sure. So the first question, if I'm implementing a public-facing supplier portal for about 2,000 vendors, does that come in the 50K limit? From what we understand, it doesn't matter if the target audience of the application is fewer than 50,000. It matters if the total population that you serve is greater than 50,000. So my understanding of the regulation is that your public-facing supplier portal would still require accessibility fixes. Guna asked, is it required to address the ADA issues in standard mode or screen reader mode of PeopleSoft? Yeah, it is. The DOJ hasn't carved out any kind of specific technology like PeopleSoft that they know that has issues as being exempt from this. It's a DOJ mandate. It's not like a PeopleSoft only thing that has to be addressed. Chuck, do you want to take the what tool did you use to evaluate the PeopleSoft pages?
Yeah. So first, also to get back to Guna, I know PeopleSoft, say even Fluid Pages, they have issues that show up in standard mode where they've resolved it in the screen reader mode. So again, that's something on your compliance plan. If you find things that are impacted on your standard mode and not in the screen reader mode, you want to list that as a solution. That you have the accessibility screen reader mode that they can switch to. It used to be kind of hard for people to navigate there to turn it on, but now on Fluid Pages they have it in the Fluid header. And for Nagarajan, what tool did you use to evaluate the PeopleSoft pages for accessibility? This was actually a tool that we wrote. It's something that we've used at client sites. It's and pretty much an approach that we recommend is kind of developing something that kind of is automated. So we kind of, for that one, you can use things like Playwright and Axe tools and different ways of actually handling automation. There's a lot of different tools out there, but that's actually a tool that we wrote. And kind of speaking of tools, there's different things like DECU has their Axe dev tools. There's the ARC Toolkit Chrome extension, a Wave evaluation tool. And what we've seen is that some customers, they just run things in their dev tools, like as a plugin. And we've asked, okay, hey, can you give us a list of what you found? They said, oh, well, we can't really export it, so that kind of is really what gave us the idea. Hey, let's just create something that generates these reports and makes it easy for you to see the issues and actually work on those issues. So there are some enterprise source solutions out there that have like compliance reports and more robust tasks and web crawling. Like DQ, they have like their Monitor Enterprise version. There's Wave has a standalone. There's Site Improve, Silktide. So there's a number of solutions out there, but really, we found using our tool pretty easy to kind of script and identify some of the main use cases out there.
Charles asked, are we expected to implement or write our own WCAG scripts? That is one option, but Chuck's going to be showing something pretty cool that you may be interested to see. So I'll leave a little teaser there that we'll show in a bit. And then Barry asked, are we noticing issues with focus traps? Specifically, so Barry's talking about keyboard like tab navigation, and the answer is yes. PeopleSoft has those, and they are fixable. But yeah, that is a big area where there are problems to be addressed. And looks like we're getting quite a few answers about how you're using Fluid. Nagarajan asked again, what about Lighthouse tool? Lighthouse is fine. I'm interested in what Chuck's opinion is, but Lighthouse, in my opinion, is kind of a lightweight, less robust way of checking accessibility. It's like a good, quick check to see what you might be up against, but I don't think it's as robust as some of the other accessibility checking tools. Would you agree with
Yeah.
that, Chuck?
Yeah, it's I would say it's more general purpose because it also deals with performance and SEO and a lot of other things. So it's not primarily focused on accessibility, though they do have that. But any and all tools are recommended, I would say. And really the thing is even with all these tools, a lot of times they might only catch 50%, of the issues. So you can't just rely on tools alone. There's a lot of manual testing involved in cataloging.
All right. And I see some other questions, but let's save those so we can keep going, make sure we get through everything. Let me go to the next one for you, Chuck.
All right. So addressing accessibility gaps. Yeah. So with this really the you know the trying to modernize PeopleSoft to use Fluid. It gives the consistent mobile friendly experience. So it's responsive. It takes care of a lot of accessibilities. And one thing to point out is these classic pages. I think a lot of the technical folks know a little bit about it, but these are really table layouts, and a lot of times things aren't in a natural DOM order. So they rely on like tab index fixes to tab to the proper fields often. And really, this is like technology from the 1990s, and it doesn't use the latest web standards. But Fluid, on the other hand, they've moved towards this. So the layouts and the DOM ordering, all that much improved. They offer accessibility feature for students and employees. As Jay mentioned, if there's an accessibility issue, Oracle is tackling it as a defect, as a bug. And really these Fluid pages, they're designed to be reactive, so they can work with smaller devices, mobile and tablets. And and there's also a lot of configuration involved in these. So yeah, so really with the Fluid, they've got things like the page composer drop zones, where they can be configurable and allow you to add fields, to deliver Fluid pages without customizing the component. You can add instructional text or help text, additional labels. That one's gold for WCAG fixes. There's they have like a branding theme and CSS layering, so you can where you can register style sheets and have theme style sheet mappings and component level overrides. And as you've probably seen with the tiles and home pages, and there's more navigational control. So in Classic, there's a lot of repeated navigations with like say the enterprise menus and the nav collections and inconsistent paths, and where Fluid they include things like skipping navigation issues, or skip navigation, so they can which is an accessibility thing where users can tab over all the main header stuff and get right to the content. There's built-in accessibility hooks, like the what was brought up in the chat, the screen reader mode, having that toggle. There's a lot of keyboard shortcuts, accessible controls, recognized by the assistive text. So a lot of advances there. Yeah, and whereas Classic, the remediation is really kind of like fixing the page or fixing it after it's rendered, where Fluid remediation becomes, fix the framework behavior.
So speaking of Fluid, obviously we talked about that quite a bit because just so many issues go away in Fluid compared to Classic. But as we talked about at the beginning, not every page is going to have a Fluid equivalent at some point in time, and definitely there's not 100% coverage now. So what are your options if delivery fluid isn't on the table for you, either now or in the future? So one great option is to use a low-code framework like our GTE Forms product. You can develop a new fluid front end, and that also includes the ability to configure component interface transactions to update PeopleSoft. Our GTE Forms product for the end user is accessible, and we treat accessibility problems like bugs when they get reported, and we fix those. I'll comment that specifically our Redwood UI, which we released towards the end of last year, is our platform upon which we'll make accessibility fixes. Another option is you can use iScripts as a presentation layer in front of a classic component. So basically you're using the iScript, a custom one, to build a new front end in front of a classic component that has a problem. You can leverage custom post-render JavaScript fixes. So this falls into that WCAG script layer that we've talked about. Again, Chuck's going to show us something cool in just a bit. And your last resort is to build custom PeopleSoft pages that meet standards. This is obviously the last option you want to go for. It's the hardest and the most time-consuming by far. But you may end up having to do that for in some cases.
Yeah,
So,
and Jay, if I may
go ahead.
add on the iScripts, with the some of you may be using the GT's Web UX solutions, and a lot of times these have a beautiful user interface, and it provides a presentation layer. But some of these integrations too, they can interact with classic components behind the scenes where you're maybe capturing data through the presentation layer and then interacting directly with the component, or as Jay mentioned, with component interfaces. So there's a number of solutions with component interfaces, and our Web UX also uses that as well as a solution. So besides just presenting data, you can actually interact with data. The other thing on that is, which we didn't call out, was also using like a digital assistant, where say our IDA product, it actually is accessible, and you can actually do interactions in a conversational manner. So that is a different approach to address these accessibility issues.
Yeah, we should have had a bullet for that. That was a miss. Okay, all right. So GT can help you along the way, wherever you are. Maybe you're early in your journey and you don't even know the full extent of the problem you're up against. Maybe you're more mature, or you're further along the journey where you're in doing implementations. GT, we've been helping clients with accessibility for a long time, and including heavy investment in making sure our products are compliant also. So we can help starting with discovery if you're early on. What are the gaps that exist in your organization? We can help you do an analysis, and then help write a strategy for you. This is that compliance plan that we talked about, where here are all the issues, here are the high priority ones, and help you build a roadmap towards full compliance. And then lastly is implementation. We have ongoing projects as we speak, where ranging from helping clients implement forms to just PeopleSoft development, doing staff augmentations to help you fix the accessibility gaps that are identified. So wherever you are, GT we can be your strategic partner for getting to full compliance with WCAG.
Yeah, and kind of as Jay mentioned, we've got like the discovery, strategy, and implementation. So really that discovery piece, there's the accessibility assessment, fluid usage, identifying how much classic usage you're using, what kind of content you have. For strategy, we have workshops to help and again come up with a timeline and roadmap and design changes. The implementation, again, that's strategic expertise and helping to implement products. One of the things with a lot of our web UX projects is we build in additional time for accessibility. Just knowing that many institutions have accessibility teams and usability teams that actually log a lot of things, and and include a lot of things that are the recommendations and the nice to haves, or even going up above AA compliance. So we definitely can work with your teams at any stage, no matter where you are on the journey. And we know it's a tough road, and we want to be there wherever you are on that road. And right here, there's a QR code that takes you to our PeopleSoft accessibility compliance offering. So that's probably, when you have time, please go check that out. All right, so the accessibility assessment. This is again, it's reducing accessibility risk in PeopleSoft. You've got your baseline. For this offering, we typically come in, we identify with you certain pages that you want to do an accessibility check on. Provide that baseline accessibility report. This is like pre-remediation. And then we also provide a post-remediation validation report. So that report really it's the automated WCAG 2.1 AA assessment, of like 10 representative PeopleSoft pages. And then after we remediate, we do a validation report. So the same report, and seeing how it is. So that's after applying number 3. We have a PeopleSoft WCAG compliance accelerator tool, and this is something we're throwing in with this offering. So this is something that addresses some of the common issues. It's something that basically addresses a lot of these common PeopleSoft accessibility defects at scale. So really, part of this is helping get this applied and come up with a migration plan, and then also an ADA Title II accessibility roadmap. So really, this is a practical plan to continue progressing towards your WCAG 2.1 level AA. And again, like I mentioned earlier, this includes recommended testing approaches, your ownership model, so your governance, and the next phase actions to continue on your progress to full compliancy. And really, this roadmap is something that's more tailored towards PeopleSoft, but it can be a base framework for for you to use institutional wide. And so kind of in that sense, even though our assessment is just on PeopleSoft, it should hopefully open your eyes to some of the bigger things and bigger needs throughout your organization. So kind of with that,
Chuck's gonna show us a demo of this guy, which we think is pretty cool. So I'll stop sharing, and Chuck's gonna share his screen.
Okay. Hang on one second. You know what? There it is. It's off my screen. All right. So real quick, I did want to show kind of this report. So this is a report we ran against some classic pages. So really, each page that we looked at, we have a report. We come in, view the report, gives a little bit more detail. So it has the actual URL, the page. It pulls some of the elements and some of the selectors. So really, as you're reporting issues to PeopleSoft, instead of like just sending a screenshot of, say, this tool or the let's say some of your dev tool extensions that you might have. We did see that, we have heard that Oracle says, oh, we don't support wave issues and wave reports. So really it's important to find the element, find the HTML, call out what the issue is or the description, and then actually you can actually find the element and just copy the direct HTML from your page when you create a ticket, so that they say, oh, it doesn't matter if it was a tool that found it, you're violating this rule and this element, and here's where it is, and you're on your page. But the other cool thing about this is if you are addressing issues, really, we come in and go and read more about the issues and find out why it matters and how to resolve it. Now, the tool that Jay was mentioning, this is the PeopleSoft WCAG Compliance Accelerator tool. I'm going to show an example of that in just a second. Right here, I have a couple classic pages in here. I had to use one of our development systems, since a lot of our other demo systems are actually in Fluid. But I did want to show this. Show this, and so right here, even with this page, we've got like 13 issues. There's like 6 different rules that were violated. As you go into the pages, if we rescan, we see that this one has 22 issues, and it's like got 6 areas that are impacted. Another page is like for view paycheck. If we scan this page, we see there's 53 issues, and there's 8 areas here. So give me a second here. So basically, we have like the accelerator. It's a quick fix tool that addresses some of the common areas. So I've just enabled it. One thing you'll see right here, I actually have something. This notification can be turned off. I just have it here for the demo purposes. But we're on this first page. That's the one that had the 13 issues and 6 areas. So now it's down to like 6 issues. And really, some of these like the tab index is the one which you don't necessarily want to remove tab indexes, and that's where in the roadmap or in your compliance plan, you want to really call that out and call that you've used keyboard testing, and that removing that because it's a legacy app actually worsens the experience for the user. But we come in here, and now we run this one, and we're down to like 2 issues. Again, most of these are that tab index, which you'll have an excuse in your compatibility report. And this one, all page content should be contained by landmarks. This is more of a recommendation, and nothing specifically says that's a requirement. That's just one of the proposed solutions. But the big thing is, say on this paycheck, again, there's like 53 total issues and all that. When we rerun it after this tool's in place, you see we're down to actually three issues. And again, the tab index, you'll have something missing that, and then you've got the page content should not be contained in landmarks. So again, these are minor things and not really a true requirement. But the cool thing about this is this applied this would be applied globally. So if you were going to just a standard PeopleSoft page like structure and content, you'll see it actually addressed and cleaned up, that page on the fly. And there's certain modes that you can turn it on where you can actually see what's been fixed and where it's at. But that's a little sneak peek of the tool. Jay, I'm gonna hand it back to you for the get back to the presentation.
All right.
And again, kind of with that tool, one thing is, again, it's just trying to address a lot of the common issues. So really, at the time of the assessment, you get the latest tool, and we're constantly on projects and finding more common items and kind of adding to the tool. And the other thing is, if you remember the kind of the flow chart, is that even though you have these global fixes, sometimes you want to have additional fixes that are page focused, page targeted. So there might be something specific to that page. So there's ways that you can kind of leverage a similar technique to apply fixes directly to those pages for one-offs and for the edge cases. So,
All right, we had a few questions come in, which we'll answer them, some of them in the Q&A, but one was from Susan, as if this tool is available for purchase, which leads right into our next slide. Take it away, Chuck.
Yeah, so really that tool, it's really currently it's free with our assessment, so it's really only offered during the assessment at the moment. And for anybody that does sign up for our assessment, normally it was 10 pages, but anyone here, they would get 5 additional pages, and they'd also get a 25% discount on any follow-on work within the first year. So that's after the assessment is complete. So really part of that, remember I mentioned the report and having a follow-up report. So that might call out different things. Say if you have custom classic pages or custom components that the tool doesn't resolve things, and you want to put some development effort into resolving those, that's where this 25% discount can be applied, and that's on the services for projects there. So yeah, so that's kind of hope I answered the question there. But if we see a lot of demand, I'm sure we can talk with our leadership on the product.
All right, that's the end of our prepared content. So we have time for Q&A. Let me grab some that were asked. Kevin asked what version of People Tools we were running our test against. Do you know what People Tools version that environment was, Chuck?
Yeah, so the HCM was on 8.6.1. The iHub was on 8.6.0, but we've ran the tests against various different environments. So really, depending on where you are with your tools version or your PUM releases, you might have different outcomes. So that's why, as part of the assessment, we're really trying to find your high profile pages that have the most impact, and then run the assessment directly, on your system. All right. And then what do they mean by landmarks? Yeah, so with landmarks, there's like ARIA roles. Like if it's a menu, there's actually the layout where maybe in HTML, they have HTML layouts like main or different groupings. So with classic, a lot of those pages are just divs and tables and everything kind of rolled up. So they're not using some of newer traditional landmarks. So a lot of times you address those by adding ARIA roles.
All right.
And
I
yeah,
think
I
that
see
was
some
it.
comments on path lock. I think we have all the okay, is the so the accelerator accessibility fix, that's something that gets installed into PeopleSoft. And that can be added to like a branded header as an element. It can be added as a global through global event mapping. So it's something that is installed in PeopleSoft.
Michael asked if the developer pages like structure and content have to be accessible. The answer is that the DOJ doesn't make any carve out for like developer only pages. But those kinds of pages I think would certainly be very low priority for most organizations. The biggest metric for determining priority of a page is going to be how many users actually use the page, and structure and content, for example, is going to be a small fraction of the total population. And then I will leave the cost question to Scott. And then Nagarajan asked, how will we fix people tools limitations, like unable to zoom to 400%? Our accelerator doesn't fix every tools issue. It just fixes many common issues for it. But we do have products like GTE forms, for example, that does work with like the 400% zoom. It'll resize and reflow such that there are no accessibility problems. So while the accelerator may not address that one specifically, GTE has tools and offerings and expertise that can help fix that problem specifically. All right, Scott, you want to take over?
Sure. Do you want to flip to the next slide?
Yep.
So this is a quick plug for anybody here who might be attending the Alliance conference down in Orlando. Yep. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. So this is a quick plug for the Ignite conference that is coming up in a few weeks. It's part of the Alliance conference. For those of you who are involved in higher education and public sector, the Alliance conference might be something that's familiar to you, but for the first time ever, the conference is open to any industry if you want to participate in the Ignite conference, which focuses exclusively on Gideon Taylor products and services and content. It's got unique user-led content delivered by both GT and by our clients. There are literally hundreds of attendees that are going to be at the Ignite and Alliance conference that are using GT products and services. So it's a great opportunity to network as well and get a lot of really good content during the sessions on things like UX, AI, eForms process automation, and other PeopleSoft services, managed services, hosting migrations to OCI, a whole host of things. So that QR code there, you can go ahead and scan that and find out additional information on the Ignite conference. And the next slide. And then finally, we also offer public trainings. And there are a lot of these that are focused on GTE forms. There are some that are generic to PeopleSoft overall. And that QR code there has a link to our training webpage. So if you've got questions and you want to drill into additional details about any of these classes and their descriptions and potentially enroll, by all means, go ahead and scan that QR code or go ahead and send an email off to info@GideonTaylor.com, or you're welcome to reach out directly to me, Scott@GideonTaylor.com. And I think that's it. We are now past the hour. Oh, our 2 upcoming webinars, in case these aren't on your calendar yet. There's one coming up next week, as a matter of fact, 1 week from today, that's going to be talking about a rapid implementation of AR and billing for PeopleSoft that we did for the University of Oklahoma, extending that to a whole new audience of users. So that will be a kind of an overview of that project, the approach to it, and how that project was executed. So certainly join us for that if you are involved with PeopleSoft financials, or if you're just interested in finding out how a really successful project ran. And then secondly, March 19th, a month from now, we are going to be hosting a recap of the Ignite and Alliance conference, kind of the high points, some of the really cool things that were discussed, general summaries of sessions and demonstrations of solutions. So that's something that is always a highlight, is coming back from the Alliance Conference and Ignite this year, and giving folks our impressions of the latest and greatest within PeopleSoft and GT.
Two more questions came in,
Oh.
Scott. One was if the recording session is available to watch for everyone, and then the cost on the accessibility assessment. I don't know if we finally decided on a price, but those are two questions that came up.
I don't have that at my fingertips, but I'm more than happy to, we can follow up and share that information. With regards to the recording session, or the recording of this session, yeah, you'll receive an email probably within the next week with the link to the recording. We also post this on our website and we post it on YouTube. So it will be accessible. And I think that's it. Chuck, Jay, any closing thoughts from you guys?
Nope. That's it for me.
All right.
Yeah,
Very
I'm
good.
good.
Well, everybody, on behalf of Gideon Taylor and the team here, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully you found this informative. If you've got any questions, by all means, feel free to reach out to us, info@gideontaylor.com. And we look forward to having you join us on future webinars. Thank you very much.